Greetings and salutations. My name is Michael Schwahn, and this is your one-take review of 9 Years of Shadows. Now, before we get too far into it, I gotta say that I'm not normally a large fan of Metroidvania games. I find that they do a lot of backtracking, and when they're doing this backtracking, it often feels like they're just doing it to waste your time. It never feels like it is contributing to the gameplay or like you're feeling you're accomplishing anything new out of it. It feels like you just went down this hallway so you can get the double jump so you can run all the way back down that hallway, down a different hallway that you've already went down because you found a table down there that you need to be able to jump on top of to be able to double jump off of so you can get to the next cliff so you can actually progress through the game. And I feel like that just bloats playtime. It is not very interactive or very entertaining. So most of the time when it comes to Metroidvania games, I'm like, yeah. And because of that, I haven't played that many recently anyway. I think one of the more recent ones that I had played before I started playing more of them was Dust and Elysian Tale, and admittedly I did enjoy that one quite a bit, although I don't remember much about it anymore. Semi-recently I played Hollow Knight, and I found that one to be pretty decent, but it was definitely bloated in some other ways, but it did have fast travel, and it had these fast travel points, and I think that definitely helped it not feel as though it was wasting too much of your time as you backtracked across every corner of the map because you were able to travel significantly quicker. Since Hollow Knight, I've played Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, and I gotta say, I did not like that game, mostly because of its combat, not even because of the backtracking. I feel like the combat in the game just felt bad. The backdash was just not there for me, did not feel like a very legitimate option, and almost all of the weapons just felt like terrible options when it came to actually trying to dispatch your enemies. I did play it on the Nintendo Switch, and supposedly the Switch version is bad, but also supposedly it's been patched and was supposed to be good. I definitely played it after the patch because I played it in the last year or two, but I did not enjoy my time with it. I did manage to finish it, but did not enjoy it. And then most recently, I played Moonscars, and I did find that to be a pretty solid game, although with some pretty sizable issues. I did do a full review of it, and I'll leave a link down to that review in the description below the like button. Now, with 9 Years of Shadows, I was really drawn to this game because it was so eye-catching. The trailers were these brilliant, vibrant, very well paced out trailers with this stunning art and really captivating music. But they announced the release date, and it was releasing like 3 days after Resident Evil 4 Remake. But I had managed to hype myself up enough for 9 Years of Shadows that I elected to play 9 Years of Shadows instead of touching Resident Evil 4 Remake. That's how excited I was for this game after seeing a lot of the marketing for it. Now, that said, I've finished 9 Years of Shadows. I'm currently playing Resident Evil 4 Remake, and we'll have a review for it sometime in the next few weeks. But with 9 Years of Shadows, the premise of it is you play as Europa, a young woman, and she's a knight, but not like an official knight. She's definitely like somebody who is trained and just is doing their best. They're not like part of any royal guard or anything like that. A curse appeared, and it is robbing the land of life and color. So when the game starts out, everything is just a bunch of shades of gray. It is drab. The land has been drained of its life, and everything is slowly wilting away as the curse grows stronger and expands, and the idea is that it will eventually consume the entire world, while currently it is localized to the region, I guess. And this curse has existed for 9 years, thus the name 9 Years of Shadows. The curse exists in this castle, or this tower, and this castle/tower is on top of a giant that apparently you can just walk up on top of and just like get into the tower whenever you want. So, you know, whatever. Europa goes to the castle in the hopes of being able to end the curse. She meets the source of the curse, who is a demon named Belial. Belial whoops her ass. She is quickly overwhelmed, but she is ultimately saved by this ghostly, beautiful, cute little teddy bear named Apino. And Apino is a source of light and therefore is also a source of color. So when Apino comes to Europa's side, the world returns to its vibrant state, at least in the area right around Europa. I get the feeling that everywhere else that isn't in the immediate vicinity around Apino is still this gray, drab, dour state of affairs. Now, Europa and Apino will journey throughout the castle, trying to get the powers and tools that they need to stop Belial, and ultimately find out what is the original cause of the curse. But I am going to stop right there because going any further in any of that is going to be a pretty significant amount of spoilers, and I think that that is something you should discover for yourself. The base gameplay for 9 Years of Shadows, I'm sorry. There was a cut, but we're still on one take. I just had to cough really, really bad. The base gameplay for 9 Years of Shadows is that it's a pretty standard Castlevania affair, okay? Combat's fairly simple. You have very short combos. Your basic attack is just 3 hits, 1, 2, 3, and you do have a special attack, but we're going to come back to the special attacks in just a moment. You have a backdash, you have a jump, okay? So your actual like standard physical set is very, very standard. You do have magical attacks being sourced from Opino, but when I say attacks, I mean attack, and you have one, and it is just a pew, it is just a projectile. Opino will shoot out a little magic ball, and that just goes in a straight line. There are some very minor upgrades to it that you will get later, but I will say that those upgrades do not change the form or function of this attack really at all. It's just slightly better while still doing the exactly same thing. That said, the gameplay in this game is very smooth and very tight. It feels great to play. I talked about how Bloodstained was like kind of slow. The combat felt bad. It felt like held down, like no matter what, you were always kind of floating and swimming in mud. And this is the exact opposite of that. Everything is responsive and controlled. If you know what you want to do and you know how to do it, you will be able to do it and do it well, and it'll look great when you're doing it. And it even has a very simple design, but that simple design of the gameplay just works because it is so brilliantly executed. There's just a piece of masterwork design when it comes to the way that you are able to control Europa and navigate through combat, despite it being such a simple design philosophy. Now, Opino does have some limitations when it comes to his magic. He has a light bar that is up at the top of your screen, but this light bar is multi-purpose, multi-function. The light also is your shield, and I'm going to say that because I don't want to call it a health bar, because it is definitely more along the lines of a shield. But when you use your magic, that bar goes down. There is less light that Opino can use to protect you if you get hit. Because if you don't have any light bar, then your health is exposed. And every time you get hit, you will lose a chunk of health. It's these 2 little diamonds at the start, which means you can only get hit twice before you die. Now, you can actually get hit a lot more times than that as long as you have the shield to absorb the attacks for you. But that HP is extremely limited. You cannot restore it through any type of item or anything like that. The only way to get your HP back is to go to a save point. But because otherwise, if you've lost a chunk of your health, you ain't getting it back. So you need to keep your shield up so that that light can take those hits for you. Otherwise, you're just gonna die. And you can't get that health that large either. I think at the maximum you can get like 5 little diamonds of health, and then that's it. That's where it ends. Now, you can restore the light, though. That bar, as it goes down, you can chunk it back up by attacking enemies or by hugging Opino. So if you find yourself getting low on light, you can either get in there, get aggressive, although the easiest and fastest way to get a large chunk of your light bar back is to just hold a button down, and Europa will give Opino a hug. That restores a lot of light to Opino, which means that you're restoring your shield. And we're going to talk more about that in just a minute as well. The traversal and progression of this game does lend very, very much to your standard Metroidvania affair. There are multiple armors that Europa can find. The Zeus armor, Poseidon armor, Gaia armor, and Helios armors are the ones that we're going to talk about, and each of these comes with some unique abilities and traits is how we'll look at them. So they do have a unique special attack, although I will say this special attack, it is not very different depending on the armors. I mean, you might have one that's a little bit of a longer range or something like that, but ultimately they all feel the same. They're just combo enders, and you're just going to use them as a combo ender largely every single time. It's just 1, 2, 3 special, 1, 2, 3 special. If you think you're short on time, it's 1, 2 special, and that's just how it's going to go every single time, okay? But they just serve the same function in that case. However, they are all of their own element and kind of representative of the gods that they are named after: lightning, water, earth, and fire. And enemies have an outline, a color that surrounds them. And attacking as the element that matches that color means that you will deal significantly more damage. And I mean like twice as much damage. So if you see an enemy that has a red outline, you need to be in the fire armor or the Helios armor, and then attack them as that armor, and you'll do a lot more damage and dispatch your enemies much more quickly. And this is really one of the things that makes the combat extremely engaging beyond just it having really good controls, because it does have this simple floor, but the stance dance of jumping between armors, which you just do with the press of a button, means that you are continuously kind of just changing between them to get the maximum amount of output against your enemies. What you're doing isn't necessarily changing, but because you're wanting to pay attention to what color your enemies are and what armor you're in, it is just so much more engrossing of an experience, because it is still simple, but is definitely doing something that holds your attention very, very closely, because you want to maximize the efficiency of the output of your damage. Each armor also comes with a unique traversal element. The Poseidon armor lets you turn into a mermaid so you can swim around underwater and stuff, or jump between waterfalls. The Earth armor, the Gaia armor, has it's essentially Samus's Powerball from Metroid, okay? But instead of being able to Powerball around, you can only do it through very specific tube areas. And this will, kind of allow you to move around in places that you couldn't. It kind of functions like that double jump or the wall grab or something that you might see in other Metroidvania games. These are fun to use and utilize, and they do increase map interconnectivity, which is really good because there's not fast travel in this game. There kind of is, but there's not. You're not really fast traveling from zone to zone. You can't like go from a save room to a save room, or there's not like a mirror or a stained glass window or something near save rooms that will take you to another area of the map. There is a central elevator, and that central elevator can take you up and down the floors, and that's largely all you got. And all of the map is spread out across the sides of that central elevator, and you'd have to go back to that central elevator if you wanted to move up and down floors. But it doesn't really help you much in terms of map movement. Really though, the map just continues to interconnect itself around on the sides. So as you unlock and you have those map traversal options, you will be able to move about the map pretty quickly and pretty seamlessly. It's also not a huge map either, so it doesn't ever feel like you're having to travel for that long to really get anywhere. I do think that people will find one particular thing with this game, and that is its difficulty, okay? This game, at least on my side, I found this game to be fairly easy. I did not die much at all in my playthrough. And once I died because I was dumb and I was testing out mechanics, but otherwise I only died a couple of times. And that was to more of some of the more end game bosses. Most of the bosses I was able to beat in a single attempt. And there's a lot of bosses in this game. There's 24 or more, 24, 25 bosses. There's a lot, okay? And so being able to defeat that many of them in my first attempt against them means that I was just kind of rolling through this game without really stuttering at any point in time. This is largely due to the light bar mechanic. That light bar equaling a shield. That shield, even if you have the smallest sliver, it'll fully absorb a hit for you. It doesn't overflow into your HP. It is just one hit. And considering you can restore that light bar by attacking or by hugging Opino, it means that as long as you always have a little bit of light bar, you are borderline invincible. And it does take a couple seconds to like give Opino a proper squeeze so that he will get his light bar back, but I find that most bosses give you very, very ample opportunity to give Opino that necessary hug in order for you to just like not ever take damage. There's only a couple of bosses that were aggressive enough or had mechanics that were screen filling enough to really put on the pressure needed to make it to where you wouldn't have an opportunity to hug Opino even if you're taking hit after hit. So as long as you're landing attacks or hugging the teddy bear, you just have infinite life, which means that sure, you may be only getting a hit on the boss every now and again, but he's never going to be able to take you down either. And I find that because of that mechanic, the game is extremely approachable for most people. As long as you just remember to hug the teddy bear, you will eventually be able to chew your way through the bosses. And I think that'll probably be one of the game's largest points of criticism, is its difficulty being pretty much on the lower end. Visually, though, this game is absolutely gorgeous. It is stunning. And the visuals are really what initially caught my eye. It is what made me want to pay attention to this game. And then as it continued forward, I was like, there's so much more to pay attention to. It's got this brilliant pixel art design with these big, massive pixel art pieces. There's only a few of them in the game, but when you do see them, you're like, man, that's really cool. I love seeing really high fidelity, detailed pixel art because it's just not something that we see very much at all, whether in retro games or games today. And really, that beautiful art style maintains throughout the entire experience. You have these very vibrant colors that span across these unique zones, And thankfully, you would think that it would become kind of like a messy, and it doesn't, because each zone is largely focused on a particular theme or element, so it'll have a base color palette, and those bright outlines on the enemies to tell you which element you need to attack, that makes the enemies stand out really, really well. So combat is always easy to interpret, even though the game has a very brilliant art palette. The character and enemy designs are a lot of fun. I enjoyed almost everyone that I met. I will say that they reuse a lot of the more basic enemies. Oftentimes the enemies are based more on their element, and so you'll see, you know, this type of enemy, and the red ones do this, but the blue ones do this slightly different thing, but otherwise they look the same. And normally I'm a very heavy stickler for reusing enemy designs a lot, but this game is not very long, and with how many bosses are in this game, and the bosses do not have duplicates. And so with it being over 24 more bosses and none of those are duplicated, I am perfectly fine accepting that most of the zone enemies are relatively the same, because the bosses are really what stood out to me, whereas the zone enemies were more of like small hurdles and obstacles that you might have to fight your way past initially. The sprite and animation work in this game is top notch, and it is easily one of the most beautiful games that I have ever played in my life, and I don't say that lightly because I have played a lot of games. The game also has a great soundtrack. It's just brilliant, lovely music, and it covers a very large range as well. You have these really good harmonic tunes for when you're in a zone, and sometimes the zone can have its own entity and air and personality because of what the music is lending to it. But then you'll get into the boss fights, and some of the boss fights have very standout themes. They do reuse they have like a general boss fight theme that they use for a handful of them, and that's perfectly fine, but it's an enjoyable listen all the same. There is no voice acting in this game, but I will say that the story does not suffer from it in the slightest. But most of the NPCs don't feel very meaningful. The larger roster, we'll say about like 75% or so of the NPCs, that's not that very many, by the way. There's like, 12 total NPCs in this game, 12 total characters-ish. Most of the NPCs don't feel very meaningful. A good handful of them are either quest givers or they're like the upgrade station guy. They do have stories and you can hear their stories, but it just doesn't feel nearly as impactful as the core cast of characters. And that core set of characters is a very strong set, and they deliver a very powerful story with a meaningful message in a very lovely and succinct way. Yes, I cried, not a surprise, but I'll let you know all the same. But this is a beautiful and lovely experience that I think that you will absolutely cherish if you do take the opportunity to pick it up. Now, as we close this out, I will say I did experience a couple of bugs. I've seen some people talking about performance issues with the game. I had zero. Now, I do have a pretty decent computer, okay? I got a 3070 Ti, a Ryzen 9 5900X, and 64 gigabytes of RAM. So I got quite a bit of power here, so maybe I was just brute forcing past whatever performance issues people have been talking about. The game did crash on me, but when I say that, the game crashed every single time I closed it. I would hit exit game, the game would freeze, it would say Unity has crashed, and then the game would close out. And I was like, well, that's fine. That's what I was trying to do anyway. It wasn't a big deal. Ultimately, it ended up just being entertaining. And there was one side quest that I wasn't able to fully complete due to a bug. And I think it's because I might have sequence broke the game, because all of the side quests involve going and finding and killing bosses, okay? That's what all of them are. If there's one that isn't that outside, I guess one of them is technically fully upgrading your armor, but to do that, that involves going and killing all the bosses. I killed one of the bosses before I got the quest to kill it, and I think that's why I didn't get like the mark of completion to be able to continue on with the full side quest chain. I did technically still get credit for it. I got the quest rewards for it, but I don't think the game actually properly saw that I had done things in the way that it wanted. But well, I digress on that. It wasn't a big deal, and it didn't keep me from finishing the game. I just wasn't able to mark off a couple of little boxes that are technically side quests anyway. This game is made by Halberd Studios. They are a Mexican indie studio, and this is their very first game, okay? And I was blown away by it. This game is absolute quality through and through. They did an absolute masterful job in the production of this game, and I am so impressed by everything that they have put forward here. My total playthrough took about 8 hours, and I was stunned at the amount of content and the quality of content that existed within that 8 hours. That is not a very long experience, but getting 24 or more bosses in 8 hours, plus just how visually stunning this game is alongside its incredible audio design, I cannot express how good of an opportunity this game is. Some might find it too easy or too simple, but for $20, it is going to be very difficult to find better value than this incredible experience. I'm going to give this game a 10 out of 10. Obviously, I don't believe that there is a perfect game. Every game is going to have some sort of flaw in it. I don't think anything can achieve genuine perfection, but I think this game does a damn good job of striving for it and getting really fucking close. So I stand by that 10 out of 10 wholeheartedly. But let me know what your thoughts are. I would love to hear from you. If you've played this game, put it down in the comments below. If this is your first time hearing about it or experiencing it, go check it out. I cannot recommend it enough. We do have 2 upcoming reviews currently scheduled anyway. There's, of course, going to be more. We're going to be reviewing Final Fantasy III Pixel Remaster and Resident Evil 4 Remake. So if you want to catch those, please subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like. We did play through 9 years of Shadows on our Twitch channel, and that entire playthrough is available on the VODs channel. And on top of that, if you want to see what other games we're going to be playing and, of course, reviewing, maybe come check us out. So if you do watch one of the other videos on the channel, or if I see you in the live stream, thank you and enjoy.